to share your experience and your tools in organizing a Toastmasters Leadership Institute. I made you the presenter and you can start. Grazie.
Great. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this. I must say that I don't really see myself as an expert. I really have inherited all of these things from the previous division directors, from when the times also when a few years ago, Portugal used to be just one area, then one division, and now 3 divisions. I basically support myself on great teams. And I must say, you will see that in the end, that I really don't organize TLIs. You will see what I mean with this, because I don't really get into the organization of the day-to-day things that are related to TLIs. The teams do it. So the first thing we do here, and let's go back 1 year ago in Luxembourg, as soon as we had the elections of the division directors, so when I was elected, and I already knew my team, and all the team was there. On Sunday afternoon, we met for the first time, so I guess we can call that the division council, the first division council, and we immediately set out the agenda, basically a timetable for the TLIs and the conferences that were going to take place throughout the year. And that, I would guess, would be the first thing. So we decided there and then when the dates would be and when the clubs were, what would be the clubs that we were going to challenge to organize TLIs and also the conferences for spring and also for the fall conference. And obviously we didn't decide just on our side, we didn't decide by ourselves. What we actually decide was when we were going to challenge or what we were going to challenge the clubs for. So for example, for the October conference in Marinha Grande, which is in the center west of Portugal, we decided, well, we're going to challenge them and see if they're going to accept the challenge. And it didn't take too long because they said yes immediately. So 1 or 2 days later, when we got back home, we had already got their answers. And the same thing happened with all the others. So this is really important that they see this as a challenge and they see this as something that belongs to them, that they will be able to contribute from the mere logistics, let's say, to the actual contents of the TLI, of the conference, and so on. And so that tone is really important. So this is not something that comes from above, from Norbert to Amaral Almighty. That's not the point. That's not how we work in Portugal. I definitely don't work like that as well. So we sent those challenges first of all. So having those things being accepted, what we start doing is as soon as the club starts working, maybe 2 or 3 months before, they start working on the logistics, as in getting a free room. It's almost always free. I think we've only paid once in a few events in a few years, but most of the times is we get a free room in a university, in a local work club, for example, something that we usually have access to. And this means this is a very important thing, which is to lower costs as much as possible. I'll give some more information about this later on. So apart from the confirming the date, confirming the time, the location, which are the most basic things, but things that as long as it's on that day, we don't care about anything else. We don't care if it starts at 9 or 10, whether it ends at 6 or 7, as long as the content is okay. People are responsible. They're grown up. They know what to do. So there's no micromanagement here either. Okay. The other thing that we do is I usually meet with them either in person or in remotely, sometimes by phone or just by opening a Facebook Messenger chat, and we set out what are the main objectives, what we should, people should expect. This is very important because we don't really have to do the same thing, the same TLIs all the time. For example, as we know, the TLI that takes place in July, at least for us, it's in the first weekend of July, is usually the one that includes more content related to the officer roles that all clubs officers have to fulfill. And then in January or February, that doesn't have to be as strong. I mean, we still have that, but it's not as strong. So they already know that, but I always remember them, what this should be. So that sets the main, I would say, the objectives and the tone and everything, and that means that the teams will have an idea about where they should be going. and also where they shouldn't, because we also told them, don't do this and don't do that. Not in a way of, we don't want to be condescending, but we just want to make sure that we have things, more or less controlled. That's it. So we also tell them another thing, right from the outset, going back to costs for a while. As we all know, I think you probably know that as well. If not, maybe the numbers will be different this year. But until now, we used to have 125 euros per area director or per area to contribute toward TLIs or club officer training. Our policy here is that we use all of that money. So in that case, in Portugal, in Division L, we have 4 areas. So that makes 500 euros that we use in full for the TLI. So this also makes it also ensures that further on, because we use all the money, we don't really spend, we spend all that money, but we don't really leave any money for further travel. We make sure this way that area directors really get all the clubs, or at least most of the clubs, to come to the TLI. So they will see this as an obligation as well. So again, the idea here is if they didn't do this, if they weren't going to, if area directors didn't go to all club officers and say you have the obligation, you should come to TLI, they themselves, the area directors, will have to go to do further travel, and we don't want clubs to put the area directors in that situation. So it's a kind of a way of putting some pressure on clubs to attend. It's obvious that not all of them accept this, but it's very minute. It's not a big problem. It's usually local clubs. It's not a big deal if that happens. So the other thing that we do, which is very, very important, is of course the content of the TLIs. I think that's, I should spend about 90% of my time talking about the content, although I think we all know more or less what the content should be, I guess, which is related to club officer training. But my point here is to go further than that. If we just if we only talk about club officer training, then it means that people who are going there, especially people who are seasoned Toastmasters, won't see anything new there. It's only a rehash of something that they've seen in the past. They won't really give it much attention, so they won't come. So what we're doing here with the content is to make sure that there's always something new. This something new could be 2 things. One of them is to ensure that older or more experienced Toastmasters have an opportunity to share their experience. They can do this in workshops. So we have 3 or 4 workshops working side by side during the morning and during the afternoon. And this means that they will have the opportunity to share, not just to be there to receive, but also to give. And they love it. As you may imagine, I guess maybe about half of the workshops, maybe a third of the workshops are given by Toastmasters who have a lot of experience. And that's great. That's really fantastic, so that we can pass on this experience to the newer generations. The other thing is we always have some surprises. And the surprises usually come in the form of invited speakers. So we invite speakers who are well known. For example, in the last case was in April, 22nd of April, we had our spring conference. And on that spring conference, one of the people that nobody knew, even I didn't know who this person was. And to be honest, I didn't mind at all. It was a great thing for me to be a surprise as well. The organization invited a very well-known journalist, someone who used to present the national news on Sunday night. So one of the guys that maybe about 10 or 15 years ago used to be, a household person. Everywhere, everybody would know this guy. And he came, he gave a little talk. It was not in a Toastmasters kind of talk, but it was very interesting from the perspective of communication. So he came to us and shared his own experience. This was really, really, really interesting. Also to see, in this case, for example, the content itself. So it's not just the personality, of course, it's the content, that we had someone with us who could give us a different perspective from the broadcasting perspective, TV, radio, and also both from a national level, also to a regional level, because now he's a director of a local channel in Porto. So that was amazing. It was really very interesting for everyone who was there. For example, a year ago in July, I called, not my call, but I invited someone to come to TLI to share something about employment, about how we can be more how we can be more likable by the job market. So we can all talk about LinkedIn, we can all talk about interviews and so on, but there's so much more than that. So there's one guy who I knew personally, not particularly a friend, but a colleague, who wrote a book about it. And we asked him to come over, and it was not just, it wasn't really to promote the book, but obviously the theme was there. And he gave a speech for about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, also with the Q&A at the end. Everybody loved it, or at least most people, I'm sure they loved it. It doesn't really mean that everybody, loved it without exception, but most people loved it. Even those that weren't looking at the job markets, who have very established jobs, like myself. I didn't really need that, I thought, but it was interesting for everyone. So we usually have one or two of these moments. The other thing we have is social moments. So breaks are not short. You can't just have 15 minutes or 10 minutes break. It's not enough. People want to talk to other people. Sometimes they haven't seen each other in months. So the social aspect is very important, so people can meet, see old friends, make new friends, of course. Also, and to finish this off, in the evening, there usually is a dinner, which is off the content, so it's off TLI or whatever conference, whatever we're talking about. And what we do is we send out an email, say, who's interested, and just come over, and then we can share the expenses, and that's it. So it's nothing too well organized. It doesn't have to be, as long as we have a room with enough room, a restaurant with enough room for us, that'll be enough. And that usually happens. And we stay there until very late, so that we can have enough time to process what we've heard during the day, and also to get acquainted with new friends and talk to old friends and so on. So it's always a good time when people have a good time, and everybody leaves the TLIs with the good taste in their mouths. So going back now to the content, it's very, very important that the content reflects the things that are set out in the Toastmasters manuals. There's the manual about club officer training. So basically, it has to do with the member roles, or the officer roles, but also how to do PR for the club and so on. I mean, it's not just something that is only for one person, but per officer, but everybody can use this. We also have workshops about, for example, things like easy speak. We have workshops about trying to get people to create youth learning, the YLP, speaker to trainer, speechcraft, all those programs. We are very keen on divulging them, or telling people that they exist, and there are good ways for people to learn and to have new opportunities to communicate and to lead. So again, this is not just important because it goes beyond what Toastmasters asks us to do. This goes way beyond. Again, from the social perspective, from the perspective of club building, which is to make sure that these people really find that they have a sense of friendship and family with other Toastmasters. This means that people are. This is gets to be a kind of a stickier concept. So people will stay on Toastmasters for longer because they know they have good friends there, and it really helps. I mean, I've made great friends, really fantastic friends at Toastmasters, and I want to see them very often. Even if I wanted to leave Toastmasters, which I don't, I assure you, but even if I did, the fact that I have so many friends there would weigh in the other sense, saying I don't want to go. You see what I mean? So the next thing that we do, we have decided the date, we have decided the location, we have decided who is going to organize this, we have decided the cost, which again is very important, and the cost has to be as low as possible. So just so you have an idea, TLIs for us cost between 11 and 13 euros per person. That's including lunch and coffee breaks. So that's basically, it's basically almost nothing. It's less than sometimes some people spend on gasoline to come to a TLI. It's not a lot. And then we have one thing which is probably the most important thing to make sure that TLI really, that one particular edition has lots of people coming in, and it's to make sure that everybody knows what it is, that everybody knows when and where it is, and why we're doing this, why it's important for them to come, especially for new officers, but not just new officers. For example, I think one of the best examples we have actually was from last February. in my home club here in Aveiro. It's basically a town south of Porto, about 70 kilometers south of Porto, also on the west coast. We did something that was really interesting, which was to create the figure of an ambassador. An ambassador would be any Toastmaster, any member of that local club that was responsible for the organization of TLI. Any of those people could go into could go into other clubs and tell them, viva voce, what was going to happen, why it was important for them to come, and what would they gain from coming to TLI. So can you imagine in August? I mean, of course you imagine. You're in Italy. In August, if you're spending a whole day, not an afternoon, not one morning, but one whole day in a dark room, or at least, away from the sun in the summer, that's madness, right? So we do that here anyway. But nobody complains about, because it's always, it's always a welcome time of the year. This is not as bad during the winter, but during the summer can get quite bad. Still, last year we had more than 100 people coming in. This year in February, which wasn't really a rainy day, it was a very nice day, cold but very nice. We had 119 people. This is more than twice the number of people that we would need to fulfill the DCP program for every club for the attendance. So we had about 14 clubs, 14 clubs already chartered. So four people per club, that's about 52 people, right? Or 56 people. So we had more than twice as many people as we needed. So why? Because again, we had those ambassadors. We had people changing the cover images on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, to show everyone, in their networks, that they were coming to TLI. We had this running for a few weeks before. We sent out emails. I sent out emails particularly. I sent out emails to the officers. I sent out a general email from my own, from Gmail, from my own account, which is linked to Division L, to everyone, all members in the division. Even if they were not active, I would send them an email to them. Just send out an email. Almost it's spam. I don't care. I want people to come. That's it. And also we have another thing. Let me just see one. Yes, there's another thing. Of course, maybe you remember that this is not me. I mean, this is not Division L's responsibility. This should be the responsibility of the area directors. So the area directors got in touch with especially the presidents and the VPEs, the main officers, let's say, from each club, and call them directly and say, you should come. You should make sure that you come. You have at least 4 people from each club to fulfill the DCP status, but ideally many more than that, more people than that. I mean, ideally everyone from the club would come, which of course we know it's not possible, but it's something that we try. At least we try that. So having that way of telling people that they should come and all this obviously has a good result. Again, remember that this is only for one particular event. The only way to make sure that this is sustainable, that we have always a good attendance from event to event, is to ensure that we have people, that the events are good, that people like those events. And the fact that people like those events, just 1 or 2, it's not enough. They have to be excellent, all of them. So that if we have today one person coming to one event, the next day that person will, the next event, that person will bring 5 more, and those 5 will bring 5 more each, so 35, and so on. And it will accumulate, and it will be, a geometric progression, right? So this is something that we really try to make sure that everybody has, that everybody has good information and good way of, they'll come, basically. That's the good invitations to come. That's what I meant. So I don't have much more. I mean, I think we should be open now to questions. I hope you found this interesting. Just one more thing. Apart from that initial meeting that I have with the team, I don't meet them with them again. They know what to do. I'm not a micromanager. We should be leaders, right? So if anything, if they have questions, they come back to me. If anything, if I see that, for example, if they take a little bit too long in sending out invitations or in putting out their form for people to register, I ask them, so how guys are things are going and so on. I just ask them, and then they'll immediately come back to me. Things are fine, and it just goes on. But I've never had to actually go back to them and say, be mad at them because they didn't do something. No, it always goes well because they know the responsibility of doing this. They like organizing these events. I hope you found this interesting. So I hope you can use these as good practices, best practices for you guys. And I'm open to questions if you have one, Annie.
Norberto, you were perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
But I have the question also for you. Do you will be available afterwards by mail if someone has specific question
Sure.
like a sample agenda or a suggestion or consultants?
Anytime, always available via Facebook, Gmail, anything. That I'm here.
Can I
Thank
ask
you
a
so much.
question, Francesca?
Sì, sì,
Hello?
claro.
Hi, Norberto. It's Matthias
Hello.
here. A quick question. Do you have something like an organogram or a list of tasks that we can give to the teams as a guideline?
I don't. I'm afraid no. We never really organize that because it's always so organic. But it's a good way. It's a good idea to have one, a checklist or some kind of wiki that we could share with that. I think we could kind of create one now.
Okay, because out of my experience, I was surprised that things that, for example, I thought that they would be expected and understood by everyone. When you don't go into micromanagement, then it is a surprise when things are obvious that they don't appear obvious to all teams. So I was actually thinking maybe there is some guidelines we can help them out so they can feel secure and they don't come up back asking for micromanagement. So we'll talk later on. Yeah.
Good idea. Thank you.
I have a question to Patricia from Rome. Norberto, so first, what do you cover with the area funds? And second, how do you bribe the officers so that they come? What do you do? What do you offer them?
Free drinks. No, I'm joking. Okay, so going back to the first question, what do we do with the area funds? We do everything that we can, which is allowed by the rules, which is coffee breaks and refreshments, printing materials. Sometimes if we have awards for conferences, we use those as well. Obviously, that's not area, that's division, but it's the same thing. It eventually ends up in the same, with the same, for the same result, for the same end result. So we do. In the beginning, I don't know if you received already a kind of a cheat sheet with all the information that all the expenses that we can incur and what we can do with what we can use this money for. And in there, there's a kind of footnotes. Yes, there's a footnote where it says, okay, so this can be used for refreshments, for this and this and that. It cannot be used, for example, for transport. So we don't use that for transport. Use that only for that. Of course, the rest, the money that is done, that is by all the other expenses, that's the thing that is going to be divided across all the other Toastmasters, the members who are going to come. So that money that we get from the areas will be a way to reduce the costs that people would have to pay. So we don't obviously we don't pay that. In any case, so think about this. I mean, if you have about 100 people per TLI, and we have about 500 euros. That means that they will pay less, €5 per person. It's a nice sum. I think it reduces from about 18 or something to 12 or to 13. About that, it's about that type of money. Second question: how do we bribe officers? So we always tell them it's compulsory. They have to. That's the thing. We have to tell them. First thing is, we tell them that it's really important for them to come if they want to have a good club, if they want to be able to be proud of their club within a few months, within a year or so. When they finish their own terms, they can hand over the club in better condition than when they found it. I think it's not a question of vanity, it's a question of pride, but in a good way, in a good sense. Sometimes, also, I don't really think that, for example, presidents or VPs, for example, really need too much, because most of the times when they get to that point, they're already part of the family. They already feel part of family and friends that they find at Toastmasters. with a few exceptions. As usual, it's normal. This is not the perfect system. But if they find that they have good friends at Toastmasters, they're the first who start doing that in their own club. They say, "Oh, we have TLI. We should all come. I'm going." So I'm setting the example for everybody else. When I'm saying I was obviously talking about as if I was the president of a club, and that really, so they themselves already feel that pressure before we even have to do it, although we do it anyway.
Oh, thank you. There was a question from Flavio. What's the average age of the Toastmasters in Portugal? And certainly, do you also invite non-officers to the TLI?
Yes.
Yeah.
Starting with the last question, we invite everyone without exception. Even sometimes if someone is not a Toastmaster and they want to come, what's the problem? Let's let them come, and I'm sure that next time they'll have an opportunity. They will join Toastmasters. But that's not the main aim. The main aim, obviously, is to get officers. Although we try and get everyone to come anyway, because we see this as a way for all, again, to meet and to learn as much as possible. Also, within 6 months or within 1 year, those who are not officers, they will become officers. So they only have some start training 1 year in advance, which is, I think, something good to do. Now, I'm sorry, I forgot your first question because I started with the last one. Can you repeat that?
It was what the average officer's age, because you seem all to be young and really want to have fun and.
Yeah. So basically, that's entirely correct. So what we're doing here. Sorry, I missed my window here. Okay, I'm back to go to meeting. So yes, most of the times the officers are young, and I would say not just because of when it comes to age, but when it comes to experience in Toastmasters. The reason is that people who are more experienced already have had that experience of being a club officer. And we don't want people who have been club officers to keep being club officers year after year. We want to have, obviously, renovation. So in order to do that, we start grooming, let's say, we start dealing with thinking about the new leadership 1 year before. So, for example, the current president, who is almost going out is finishing, as we all are, his term, he started thinking about his successor, maybe just on the same day, on the same minute that he was invited, that he was thinking about himself running. So it doesn't happen like that, obviously, in all clubs, but I think that's really, it's working quite well. Some clubs actually leave it for the last minute. Well, let's say last minute, maybe last month. So I know about 2 or 3 clubs who are going to decide who are going to be their new officers now in June. And it's not a big deal. I know that I'm okay with that because I know that they have already enough critical mass for them to be at ease. They know that they can trust whoever is going to be there at leading the clubs. So that's so again, you asked the average age. I don't really know, but I guess in some clubs it's about in their 20s, some other clubs in their 30s. Very rarely will be in their 40s, although that was my case 2 or 3 years ago. I was a president when I was, I think, 41, but I would guess most presidents are in their 30s, sometimes in their 20s. Presidents and other club officers, obviously.
Alberto, last question from Emilia. How big is the venue? Can you really find by the university or such a big venue to host hundreds of people? 100, at least
100, yes.
No?
Well, this year for the TLI, the one that took place in February, was the room was about, I think, for about 150 people, 140 or so, and we knew it would be enough. But we knew that if we hadn't got enough people, that we could move to a different room, or if we needed a much bigger place, that we could also move to a much bigger place. So we had that kind of flexibility. Also, it comes from the fact that currently that club that organized that event is actually hosted. Well, the meetings where they take place in the university. So some of the people who are in the club are already directors at the university departments, or at least, actually, when I say some, just one of them. The rest are students or people who are in the youth, the youth union, the student union. So they have already very good relationship with the university. One thing that happened a year ago in July, it was the first TLI that was taking place as soon as when I joined, was that we went to a higher kind of a university as well, but not a local one, a different one, and they charged us for the for the room, but the charge was not too much. I mean, we're talking about 300 euros, I think, for a whole day, and not just one room, but also the other rooms, the breakouts. So in all, we had almost the entire university for us. It was not that big anyway, but we had one auditorium. Are you still there? Okay. We had one auditorium. We had the main lobby where people could get together and could have lunch and could have coffee breaks. We had a whole garden in front of us, huge, so that we could just go there. Just people who wanted to smoke go outside. And we had 4 rooms. So I guess for 300 euros for a whole day, it wasn't really a bad deal at all. It was quite a good deal, I think.
Perfetto. Grazie, Norberto. If you want, you can stay. We have the last 2 presentation, and it's about how to sell the club and the